Devika, so tell me about yourself and your professional background.
Yeah, so I am a career advancement specialist and the co-founder of Zaka. Our platform is a career development and advancement platform and also a community for first and second generation immigrants. Our goal and our mission is to empower first and second generation immigrants with the education and the inspiration and the networks that they need to succeed in North America through their careers.
Very interesting. And why do you think they need that? What are some things? What are some things that they would need that maybe a native speaker would not need?
Yeah, so, the workplace in America, doesn't matter what type of role or position or seniority level you are, there's a specific culture around, the opportunities you have access to or what is considered, for you to be a successful performer. And a lot of that culture differs from cultures that are not American. So, for example, if you are, born in your homeland, but you were taught, not to ask for too much. You were taught to be humble and grateful. Well, when you move to America and you have to be vocal about what it is that you want in your career, that's going to feel a little bit uncomfortable. So Zaka as a platform, we aim to make sure that first and second generation immigrants are able to succeed in North America based on how they are expected to show up in their careers.
That's very interesting. It's very important.
Yes.
And why are negotiation skills so important for people working in the United States or at an English-speaking workplace?
Mm-hmm. So in North America, negotiation is an expected practice. So, you can't expect that, let's say if you're applying for a new job, just as an example, that, you get the role, you get hired, you're very excited. You can't be expecting the organization or the people who are hiring you to give you the very best offer. Because remember, businesses are trying to save the most amount of money. They're trying to get the most from you for the least amount expected from them. So you can't assume that they want to give you the absolute best, that they want to give you the highest compensation, that they are going to give you the highest seniority that you are qualified for. Sometimes, most of the time, you have to make that ask of them. And so you have to be able to negotiate those things and really command what it is that you are seeking and what you believe is fair for you.
Wow, so important. Yes. Why are immigrants intimidated to do that?
It could be a couple of things. So, going back to culture and upbringing and what was the social norm of the countries in which you come from, it could be that negotiation isn't something that's welcomed. It could be discouraged. It could be seen as abrasive or disrespectful. But in the United States, like I said, it's an expected practice. So I used to work in HR, even though it was a short amount of time, but I was also a manager in my career. And I can tell you that I always left room for people that were asking more of me because I knew that negotiation was something that was expected in the workplace. So it could be culture, values, and upbringing from your home countries, that you were taught that don't really fit to the American model. That could be the first thing. But it can also be just fear of losing the opportunity. So I've worked with plenty of immigrant professionals, and they hardly ever negotiate. They take the first offer, whatever compensation it is. Maybe they don't know if it's fair or unfair, but a lot of the times it's rooted in fear that, hey, am I going to lose this opportunity? Will somebody else get this job or this promotion over me because I'm asking for something? But I can tell you very confidently that's not the case. A lot of leaders in organizations and businesses want you to ask for what it is that you need out of your career, but they won't tell you that.
Really? Mm-hmm. Wow. That's so important to know. Oftentimes, immigrants are just so happy to even have a job, or they tell themselves, well, I speak with an accent, or I'm different. I should be just happy and content. And I'm doing better in the U.S. than I would be in my home country, so I shouldn't complain. But I tell my students, I often tell my students, you need to value who you are. You need to feel confident about your skills. You're there for a reason, right? And so often they don't believe in themselves enough.
Yeah, you were hired for a reason over so many other candidates. You were promoted for a reason over so many other talented individuals. You have to really be rooted in that. And, going back to the accent thing, that's a superpower. And I know sometimes it might not feel like that in the U.S. because, you might be in environments where you're the person that stands out. You sound differently compared to the rest.
Yeah.
But, if it's me, I get impressed by that because it shows me that you are multicultural, that you have experiences from different parts of the world. And if you have those experiences and you're bringing it to the workplace, well, you're giving me a perspective that I might not know, and that makes the business stronger. It makes the environment more positive.
That's a wonderful perspective. I recently read this quote, and it's become one of my favorite quotes, and it goes something like, "What is a foreign accent? It's a sign of bravery."
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And my mom is from the Fiji Islands, and although she has spent most of her time in Canada and the U.S. the past 40 years, she still has a very heavy accent, and it is always a point of conversation. Where are you from? Where is that accent from? So it can also help people know about you, relate to you, and help you build connection with other individuals as well. So even though it feels like something that doesn't you don't fit in, it is absolutely your superpower. So I just want people to know that.
Yes, yes. And they need to be reminded of that because often they forget. And if someone asks them, "Where are you from?" sometimes that makes them more insecure. They're like, "Oh, I have a very thick accent. I wish people would stop asking me where I'm from." Yeah. And that's sometimes why they take lessons from me. But I tell them, like you said, and you said it really well, use it to your advantage. It's a plus.
Absolutely.
The goal is to speak clearly, though, and to be understood.
Absolutely. That part. You want to make sure that you feel confident in your communication. But just because you sound a little bit differently doesn't inhibit you. You just have to make sure you're being clear and concise and you're able to communicate in a way that you feel confident and is being received well from the person that you're communicating with.
Okay, great. That's wonderful. Yes. Okay. Let's talk a little bit more about negotiation. When should we negotiate and when should we not negotiate?
There's a couple of scenarios that you should absolutely negotiate. The first one is when you're being offered a job. So I want you to remember that initial salary, that compensation that you receive when you enter a company, all your raises, all of your bonuses, all of the financial incentives that come with that will be based on that initial number. So you want to make sure that you're getting the most out of it. So what you could ask is, what is the range for this role? That will help you understand, what is that number that you could potentially ask for, but you want to make sure that, you're being mindful of your experiences and your qualifications before you ask for more. So when you're entering the job, make sure that you are negotiating the best salary that you possibly can, because again, all financial incentives are going to be based on that initial number. If you want, a lot of people get into this position in their careers where they want a raise or they want a compensation increase. Most businesses can only give you a raise of 3%. That is the standard. So 3%, say you're at a company for 5 years and you ask for a raise and they give you 3% and you feel like it's not enough, you will likely have to leave the company to make more money. So,
well, I'm sorry to interrupt. Why are companies limited to only 3%?
It's not a firm number. It could, definitely, depending on who it is and how they ask, and usually it's more senior individuals, C-level executives in general. There might be more wiggle room, but on average, across all industries, raises are typically about 3%.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So if you want more, and you could absolutely get more. I've helped people get a 10% salary increase before, and they were happy with that. But my point in saying it is you want to make sure that you are getting the most that you can out of that initial compensation, knowing that every financial incentive, raises, bonuses, all of that good stuff, is tied to that number specifically. So you want to make sure that you're negotiating that, completely new job, but especially if you're getting promoted. Say you work in a company today, but your manager comes up to you and says, "Lisa, you're doing an amazing job. We want to promote you to a senior level role." Well, you're going to have to make sure that you negotiate the compensation that you'll receive from entering that new position as well. And so those are excellent, times to negotiate, and you should absolutely be negotiating in those two specific scenarios.
Great, yes. And you have some advice. There are 3 steps to effective negotiation. I'd love to hear about those.
Yeah, so a few things. This is, one thing I will say is negotiation is a tennis match. It's going to feel uncomfortable. I negotiate all day long in my role today, and it's never comfortable. So first, embrace the fact that it's going to be.
And that's good to know that
Yeah.
others, like you, even like yourself, a professional,
Yeah.
even you get uncomfortable.
Absolutely. All the
Okay.
time. And I
Nervous.
coach people on this.
Okay. Yes.
Right?
Okay.
Nervous. It's never comfortable to ask for more, and if somebody's being really firm about it, you have to be comfortable. Just that tennis match that happens, the back and forth, that is supposed to happen. That's a natural process of negotiation. So first is embrace that. The 3 steps include know what it is that you're trying to accomplish, break that down into different options, and position those options to the decision maker. So I'll give you an example. What I want today is to negotiate better terms to compensate me more effectively for my job, right? That is usually where people stop. They'll go to their manager and say, hey, Lisa, I want more money because I'm doing a really good job. But what does that look like? What does compensation, higher compensation, actually mean? So step 2 is break that down into different options. Higher compensation could be, I want to make $10,000 more a year, or I want to increase my bonus by $5,000 a year. Additional compensation could also be, I want my company to give me $5,000 a year so I can attend leadership conferences and management training. So what does higher compensation look like? You have to know what that means for you, and then create options around that, right? So if I go to you as my manager and say, hi, Lisa, I want higher compensation, and that means $10,000 more a year, well, you might go back to HR or the team in general and come back and say, well, Devika, the team says that we can't accommodate that at this time. Well, what do you do then? Just say, okay, and keep it moving? No, you want to make sure that you have options in your back pocket. So then I would say, hey, Lisa, thank you so much for going to the HR team and asking for that $10,000 increase for my salary. I know that they couldn't accommodate that at this time, but would you consider a one-time bonus of $10,000? You go back to the team and they say, great, you have that, perfect. But what if you came back to me and you said, hey, HR said that we can't even give you that? Well, then what is that third thing that you have in your pocket? So I might say, hey, Lisa, thank you so much for looking into that for me. It seems like your hands are tied. So can we talk about maybe a compensation, a stipend that I can receive for leadership development training? As you know, I want to become a manager in this organization. That's what I'm working towards. So maybe the company can give me education stipends so I can take some leadership development courses. Can you go back to them and ask them for $5,000 for me to do that this year? So there's always something you're pulling in your back pocket, and that's what I mean by the tennis match. You're going, then the person you're talking to is giving feedback, and it might not sound good, it might not be what you want, but you always have that something else in your back pocket. And generally, between the first option you position and the last, you tend to get something that you wanted at some point in that tennis match. So know what it is that you want. Create options around that. Make sure you know exactly what that looks like, and then be able to present one option at a time to that decision maker, and be prepared. Be prepared for the no, or be prepared for, hey, we can't do this, but we can do that. But no matter where that conversation goes, you'll feel empowered because at some point in that conversation, you were able to get something more that you didn't have that day.
Wow, that's amazing. So you need to be persistent.
Yes.
You need to not just get discouraged. So if you get a no, you shouldn't get discouraged.
No, and there's been times where I was an excellent performer and I made requests from my leadership team and they couldn't accommodate it. So right now, this is January of 2024, right? And we know that the job market is not as stable. We know that there's a lot of layoffs happening right now. So if I'm in a business setting or corporation and I'm asking for a significant raise, well, it's highly likely that the company might not be able to give that to me given the state of the market in general, or organizations just being a little bit more strict with budget given the economy, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes it's not a value of or indication of my value rather, and the company thinking I'm a hard worker. They might agree with the fact that I am a hard worker and I'm deserving of that raise, but they might not be able to accommodate it at that time. So say you get a no, it's okay. It's not an indication of your worth. There could be so many different things in the background happening that you would never know. But I also want to encourage you, if you're ready for that next in your career, whether it's higher compensation, a higher seniority level, whatever that looks like, and your company can accommodate it at that time, just gut check with yourself. Are you willing to wait? And if you are, that's perfectly fine. But if you're not, that's also perfectly fine. You can apply to other roles, you can in the company, you can look externally at a different company, but always make sure that you're in a position of power. Know what's going around you, or going on around you rather, and ask questions. You know, if your leaders can't accommodate it, ask them the reasons why it's a challenge right now. Ask them if you can evaluate it again in 3 months or 6 months. Ask those questions so you know constantly where you stand. And if you know where you stand, you can make empowered decisions moving forward.
Wonderful. Yeah. And is there certain vocabulary or certain expressions that a person uses in negotiating? Let's role play, okay? Let's imagine I am your supervisor, I'm your boss, and you want to approach me and to ask for something. What words would you use? I mean, how would you say it, you know, in a way that is polite and professional and confident?
Mm-hmm. I would say, Lisa, thank you so much for meeting with me today. As you know, in my email, I wanted to discuss compensation with you. I've been at this company for 2 years now, and I've had great performance evaluations and performance assessments. I've been exceeding in my role, making sure that I'm the best performer and making sure that my teams and my clients are effective and succeeding. And I believe at this point that I am deserving of higher compensation because I have exceeded in XYZ areas, right? You want to make sure, side note, that the XYZ areas is how you're being measured in your role today.
Okay.
So make sure that you're making it really concrete. I have been expected in this position to do X, Y, and Z, but I've been doing more than that.
Okay.
I've been doing, point A, B, and C. So you're always leading with the data, right? You can't just say, hi, I want more money. That's generally
exactly.
It won't work
exactly.
like that, right?
I'd like a raise. Hi, Lisa. I'd like a raise. Can I talk to you about a raise? Well, sorry, we're not. Yeah, and then you don't know what else to say.
Yeah. So saying things like, "Are you open to a discussion around compensation?"
That's great.
I have some questions around that, or it may be concerns. Maybe you're being underpaid compared to your peers. Mm-hmm. So saying things like, "I have questions. I'd like to discuss. I'd like to receive your feedback," or "I have concerns," and then being able to have that data ready of how you're a good performer, how you're going above and beyond, the amount of time you've been in the position, the extra responsibilities you've taken on. You want to make sure that your leader knows that this is the data. That
yes.
I am an asset to this company.
Okay.
And then make your request known. And so that's how you would typically approach it.
And do you recommend doing it obviously in person or you wouldn't do that in an email?
Not in an email, but it's good to not catch your leader or decision maker off guard.
Oh,
so
okay.
In an email, I would say, do you have 30 minutes for us to just be able to meet and discuss my compensation? Here are some specific questions I have around it. That way, your leader knows what's coming. You're not blindsiding your leader with something that they weren't anticipating. And then if there are questions that you have laid out in the email where your leader might not have the answers to, well, hopefully by the time you meet them, they've been able to have, conversations with HR or whoever they need to make sure that they are able to provide you with the answers that you need.
I think that's pretty assertive to ask a boss of 30 minutes of their time. Is that pretty common? I mean, I don't work in a corporate environment, but I would be a little intimidated to say to my boss, I'd like 30 minutes of your time. What do you think?
Well, leaders are in place to support you. So I that's an expectation that they have when they accept a leadership role. I would say 30 minutes is a good ask. If you could get in negotiation, it's going to be a different conversation. There is going to be back and forth. They might have questions for you. You might have to say your piece as well. So if you were to have a 15-minute conversation, it might feel rushed. You might.
That's right. Yeah.
Did you get what you need out of that meeting? So 30 minutes, I think, is a good amount of time.
Okay.
If you requested an hour, that's a little bit much. But 30 minutes is a good amount of time to have the flexibility for you to receive what you need out of that conversation and then your leader to receive what they need as well.
Wonderful. And can you give me a way to conclude? Okay, so I'm finished, I'm asking, and then I say thank you for your time, or what are some things I can say at the end?
You say, I look forward to our follow-up discussion.
I love it. You continue with the confident, with the assertive,
Yeah. So most people, what they will do, and I'm guilty of this myself before I figured this out in corporate America, and I worked at really competitive spaces, well-known companies, right? But typically, what I would do is I would make an ask of what I want, and then the leader would say, okay, let me look into it, and I'll get back to you. And I'd say, thank you. And then the leader would never come back to me. And then I would feel defeated, and I would feel undervalued. And then what would happen? I would leave the company. Just because,
wow, that's right.
Because the leader is not expected to come back to you. This is you driving the conversation forward, right? So if your leader says, "Hey, I don't know, let me figure it out and get back to you," just say, "How much time do you think you need to have the appropriate conversations? Maybe I can add a follow-up meeting on the calendar in about 2 to 3 weeks to keep the conversation going. Is that okay with you?" And that will keep the leader accountable and make sure that there's momentum in the conversation. Versus the conversation being a dead end and going through this cycle of what I call 3D feelings: discontentment, defeat, and doubt. That usually happens when you're not getting your needs met in the corporation, and usually it means you find something else.
Wow, we all need this. These are such important skills for surviving in the workplace, any kind of workplace, and in life too, I think. This is applicable to relationships.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm married, and we negotiate all the time with one another because that's how you are successful, right?
Exactly.
Negotiation is important in the workplace, but also just having your needs met in so many different other areas.
That's really valuable information. Thank you so much, Devika. How can people learn more about your organization or get in touch with your company?
Yeah, so you can learn about our career advancement platform and community at zakaconnect.com, and also feel free to follow us on your favorite social media platforms.
Wonderful, and I'm sure people will learn a lot on Zaka.
That's our goal and our mission.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.